Kirsty will be presenting on alchemical journeys to the imaginal realms. Kirsty is a PhD candidate in fine art at De Montfort University, Leicester, UK. Her research titled Alchemy and Transdisciplinarity, the Creative Process, Self-Exploration and Transformation, combines psychotherapeutic and shamanic techniques into a ritual methodology through fine art photography. Her research aims to explore the transformational or alchemical effect on the artist's psyche by using this method and the additional impact of the work on the viewer. Kirsty has a BA with honors, a degree in photography, an MA in visual communications, an MSc in psychology, and a Cert HE in art history. She has exhibited and published her work both nationally and internationally and has presented at conferences. She's a senior lecturer at the University of Northampton and holds senior fellow HEA status. And Kirsty, we greatly look forward to this, and it's lovely seeing you again.
You too. Thanks, Rola. Okay, so hopefully you can see this shout if you can't. Okay.
Yeah.
So as said, I'm currently a PhD candidate in the UK. I'm in my third year of a part-time PhD doing practice-based fine art photography. So this is current work in progress. It's constantly changing and evolving, literally from yesterday as well. So some bits might not be completely clear. And all the images that you see on the screen are my own work. Okay. So through my research, I'm exploring ways to develop creative practice, working really with the imaginal realm, with an aim that others could follow my work, either as a methodology or framework, to achieve creative transformation. So the imaginal realm, or mundus imaginalis, as we've heard about, was developed by Corbin, and he really saw this as a kind of different type of reality. And like Jung, he differentiated between imagination and fantasy in terms of what we class as real, in inverted commas. So the imaginal realm is a real place, but in non-ordinary reality. He theorized there are multiple realities that coexist simultaneously, and there's an interconnectedness between them. We can visit these realities. And I'm really interested in this idea of multiple and interconnected realities as a starting point for my creative practice. So one of the areas that I'm working with, as mentioned, is Celtic shamanism. I work with a shamanic practitioner and also on my own. And the idea is through the shamanic journey, you can get to visit spirit realms or non-ordinary reality. The sacred drum is a large part of shamanic journeying, and neurological research has found that this rhythmic drumming can alter brain waves from beta to theta waves, so going from consciousness into dream states. Therefore, there is evidence of altered states of consciousness. So again, I'm using this to access different states and visit different realities or realms. The shamanic journey is a way of communicating with the spirit realm, and that communication can occur as images, sensations, words, etc. There's no set way. There's no, it has to happen this way. So what tends to happen for me is very much that images come through consciousness. I do get sensations and emotions and occasionally words, but predominantly it's the image. And like Jung's active imagination, the images that come through from spirit don't tend to be literal. They tend to focus on myth or metaphor and symbols, and they need to be brought into this reality and thought about and amplified to make sense or to be integrated. Additionally, shamanism has a focus on the idea of a cosmic web, so multiple realities where everything is connected across time and space, and therefore linking in with the idea of the imaginal realm as one of multiple realities. In addition to shamanism, I also work with active imagination, and Jung saw this very much as a rhizome where everything is interconnected beneath the surface and can feed into collective unconscious. So again, there's this interconnectedness of the imaginal, shamanic, spirit realm, and the personal and collective unconscious. A real kind of web that one can begin to travel around. I don't differentiate where my images come from or where the altered states of consciousness take me. For me, it doesn't really matter whether you call it spirit, unconscious, archetypes, God, or whatever other language you use. To me and the research, it's not important, because what I'm focusing on is the images and the messages that are gaining depth knowledge and finally transformation. So recently I've become interested in the idea of the Transformacene age. Hope I'm saying that right. This is a phrase coined by UK therapist Mick Collins, and he states that any viable response to the Anthropocene must include the activation of our imaginations to bring about a deep and creative response to change, which catalyses what I call the Transformacene. It is an attitudinal and behavioural shift that brings forth a new consciousness, which is committed to reviving and reanimating a sacred connection to the earth. He goes on to state, integrating technologies of transformation into mainstream culture via shamanism, dream work, vision quests, prayer, etc., could shift our current one-dimensional worldview from experiences of separateness and fragmentation to a unified vision of wholeness. And it's this transformation from fragmentation to wholeness on both a personal and collective level that I'm really interested in achieving through the creativity and the work that I develop. So what am I developing? My work explores the idea really of what I call a ritual methodology, and it combines techniques of transformation, as Colin said, to develop my own method or framework for me at making creative work, which can achieve this transformation and additionally affect the audience through their interaction with the work. So both the work and the process are alchemical in nature, as it develops an internal and external transformation. Additionally, in 1991, Susie Galbluck proposed that we need a new paradigm, which she called re-enchantment. And I believe my work is starting to explore this idea of re-enchantment or enchantment, which Patrick Curry explains as a type of numinous experience. And I think for me, that feels more achievable than the numinous. It's a part of that numinous. So the techniques I'm employing for me are starting to achieve this personal enchantment. Additionally, my work is transdisciplinary in the way that Nicolesco and Roland explain, in that the process allows for multiple realities and multiple disciplines being combined in a non-hierarchical way to create something greater than the sum of its parts. The processes that I use combine active imagination and shamanic journeying to explore what emerges. And I'm really interested in Susan Rowland's idea of allowing the work to live and to work with the work to follow its lead, to find out what it wants to be, and to go through intuition and synchronicities and dialogue with the work to create that into that final project. My work is amplified through communication between the conscious mind and the unconscious spirit or non-ordinary reality. And we spoke yesterday about photography. And for me, this allows an additional layer of turning something invisible or unconscious into something tangible and visible in this physical reality. I find this aspect really challenging and exciting, as it also challenges our notion of what is reality and what is truth. And actually, since the beginnings of photography, the idea of the real has been an ongoing discussion. So with my work, the idea of non-ordinary reality juxtaposed with the need for a tangible reality of photography creates an interesting tension. I also struggled from the start of my research with language, and the main aspects I have trouble with is the idea of the feminine and masculine. This is due to cultural connotations and assumptions of gender and binary positions. So I found it necessary to develop my own, what I hope is non-gendered, non-hierarchical language to explain this toing and froing of thought from consciousness to unconsciousness, and the kind of backwards forwards movement that Susan Rowland describes as Sky Father, Earth Mother thinking. You can see what each of these stands for. So lunar is the liminal, unconscious, nurturing, affective, reflective thoughts, and solar is the structured, objective, logical, analytical, and rational. I see both lunar and solar as being about light. And if we think of metaphorically light being about knowledge, they refer to different types of knowledge. for me as well, what's become really important is that lunar and solar, or the moon and the sun, can actually both be in the sky at the same time. So they can go beyond duality and binary positions, and could possibly link with what Birgit was saying yesterday about being trans-binary. So these are some projects that I've worked on. So this first piece, Los Cinco Espiritus, it began as a dream and then was inspired by fairy tale and a number of synchronicities. It's a photographic projected animation which explores and develops a dialogue or a dance or a communication with the 4 sacred elements. So you can see we've got air, earth, fire, and water. However, from the fairy tale that I was drawing on, which is discussed by Clarissa Pinkola-Estes, there's actually 5 spirit jugglers, and the 5th juggler is the master juggler who can juggle all of them. So the animation I produced, you can see here, is a kind of dance or dialogue between the characters and their respective elements, but they also dance or communicate with each other. So it's very much a single piece of work. And what you can see at the bottom is the reason for the old school kind of style projection is that the viewer had to walk between the projector and the images and cast their shadow. So they could actually become the 5th master juggler and interact with each of the characters and the images. So this project, Ariadne and the Crone, was based on woodland walks over a period of about 8 months in the same wood. Went back and back and revisited. And it started with a shamanic omen walk. And that's where you ask spirit an intention. So for me, I was feeling very stuck creatively. So I said, can I have some help with my work? And then I just walked and I photographed and whatever came up. And I found logs and tree stumps, which you can see here. And what I started to see was characters emerging through the shapes. And I also came across a fallen tree root, which you can see on the right. But from one particular angle, which I'll show you in a moment, I started seeing her very much as a robed figure. As I walked, I really started to develop quite a personal attachment to certain parts of the woods and to certain trees, and began to see the wood very much as a thin space where the veil is thin between realities, a very liminal space. So working with the trees in the woods, I allow my imagination to run and just follow the ideas. What you can see on either side at the top are the woodland and treescapes. I wanted them out of focus so they'd be quite liminal, and I wanted this ethereal quality. So you're not quite certain what you're seeing. As part of the exhibition, these are printed on thin silk, so they hang and move very slightly. And they're also very, very slightly see-through, so you can see things through them. You're not exactly sure what you're seeing. And then I also started to see the creatures as woodland guardians, and you can see those 2 at the bottom. There were 50 of those in total. And although they are very slightly photoshopped, it was done so I could draw out the characters, not invent them. For me, they were there already. So these characters became to me very much kind of guardians of this liminal space. And I started to see different expressions, different characters emerging. One time I walked and it was May Day. And there were dogs and children and everyone was running and playing and shouting. And every single photograph I took that day, when I got home, all the creatures looked angry. And I realized that there was something about the relationship and respect for the space. And the creatures didn't feel respected with the children and the dogs. And so my relationship with them became really, really important. You can also see in the center at the top, this is the tree root that I mentioned, but from the opposite side. And she became very much a goddess, robed goddess figure for me. And I went back to her every time I went back to the woods, and she was quite hidden off the path. It was difficult to find. But going back over the course of the 8 months, she changed so much. So her color changed through the seasons, the light changed, she grew things on her, her background changed. It was really interesting to see how she changed. And it really became quite a sacred and central piece to this work. And in some of my other photographs on here, you'll have seen that there's a sculpture of her and she's sitting behind me at the moment. So my current project is a work in progress, Labyrinth, and it started with the Susan Rowland course in Jungian arts-based research. And for this, I focused on active imagination. And this was then followed by a number of synchronicities about Ariadne and labyrinths and mazes. So I am literally at the present moment following Ariadne's thread to see where this leads me. So I am in the process of exploring labyrinths, their meanings, and there are labyrinth walks that Susan told me about and I found out about in the UK, and I will be visiting some of these. And I'm also connecting these with the Celtic spirals and ancient stone circles. So again, for me, this connects back in with the Celtic and what is known as the Celtic sacred dance within shamanism. So finally, just to recap, I think my research is about developing a ritual methodology or framework that others can use, which is about acknowledging multiple realities, multiple truths, and multiple forms of knowledge. My work is about accessing depth in order to develop internal and external transformation, and it is developing a unified wholeness. And I've just popped in any contact details and my blog and everything there if anybody would be interested at any point. And there's references as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Kirsty, for